A new family moved into Robert Eugene Otto's house shortly after his wife sold the property, and it seems as though history repeats itself. Robert the doll, who had been locked in the attic for years, was the only thing that remained left behind in the house, and the family's daughter was first to discover Robert sitting there in the attic. She brought him down to her room with her other collection of toys, only shortly after to be terrorized by Robert, just like Jean had been in his lifetime. Hi everyone, and welcome back to part 2. If you saw part 1, thank you. If you haven't seen part 1, definitely go and make sure that you watch that video now. You will not understand this part because this is like a continuation. We've been following a timeline, so imagine this is a timeline. We're about here, so we're covering this last bit of detail now. So the timeline and where we're at now is who has possession of the doll and where it gets circulated to. So as we know, Eugene Otto died in 1974, his wife Annette died in 1976, just 2 years later, and the new family had moved into the house. So as we know, there was a lot of rumours going on when Jean was alive. A lot of people had saw the doll in the upstairs bedroom staring and glaring at them, and it gave them creepy vibes. They just didn't want to walk past his house. It was just terrifying. So since they died, the stories in the city died down. So the house was then purchased by Myrtle Reuter. I don't know if I said the name right, but she purchased the artist house after Otto's death in 1974. Now there isn't much information about her and her family, but we do have a little bit of history about what happened to them when they moved into the house. So upon moving in, the daughter was the first person in the family that had found Robert left in the attic. She then added it to her other toys in the bedroom, and it was not long before Robert unleashed his displeasure on the child. The little girl began screaming out in the night, claiming that the doll moved about the room and would climb onto her bed and attack her as she tried to sleep. So again, these experiences closely correlate to what Jean had experienced in his childhood. Even after more than 30 years later, the girl, who is now grown up, states that the doll was alive and wanted to kill her. Myrtle remained in the house with Robert for a further 20 years before selling the property, of which now operates as a guest house. In 1994, the doll was donated to the East Martello Museum in Key West. This is now Robert's permanent home and is a popular and unsettling attraction. Robert is well guarded in the museum and gets thousands of visitors. Employees at the museum continue to give accounts of Robert being up to his old tricks still today. Visitors swore they heard footsteps in the attic and giggling, and some claimed that Robert's expression would even change when anyone badmouthed Otto in his presence. Even before donated to the museum, the previous owner said that Robert would move around the house on his own. Visitors to the museum and staff members alike report seeing Robert move, change expression, and even faintly giggle. The East Martello Museum encourages visitors to ask Robert's permission before taking photographs. Supposedly, those unwilling to do so are met with horrible misfortune. Robert is reported to have caused physical harm, car accidents, divorce, and job loss. Yet how is never fully explained. Those who do take photographs of Robert frequently report glitches in their camera, glitches that go away as soon as they leave the museum. To substantiate this, the museum is filled with letters of apology, of which Robert receives about 1 to 3 a day, begging the doll for forgiveness in failing to ask permission. They beg for Robert to reverse their look, but the letters only show the complaint. There are no updates as to whether their pleas have worked and resolved their issues. Not all letters sent to Robert are pleas for forgiveness. Many of them ask for advice or request curses to be placed upon others. If visitors to the house or the museum were to speak poorly of Otto, Robert's expression is said to change to one of anger. Similarly, many visitors have reported watching Robert put his hand against the glass case. Corey Convertito, the museum curator, doubles up as Robert's PA. She finds herself fielding the thousands of letters and gifts received by Robert each year. She also controls his social media presence, which is regularly updated in the voice of Robert himself. Convertito is also given the task of completing Robert's yearly checkup, whereby he is examined and weighed to make sure that the humid Florida weather is not adversely affecting his wood wool stuffing. I'm also going to be showing like a picture that I found from an article of somebody apologizing. I think it is absolutely eerie, so I'll pop that up on the screen. Feel free to pause to give it a read. So this is basically what I wanted to discuss in part 2, the events that are happening in the museum and what currently happened in the museum. Out of paranoia, before I recorded this video, I looked at a picture of Robert and I just said, look Robert, I'm gonna record a video about you, I'm not taking an actual picture. So just to make sure nothing bad happens to anybody or anybody watching this video, we're all protected. We are respecting Robert in this video. We are just simply laying out the facts on what has happened throughout the lifetime of the doll being around. So following on the fame of the doll, he's had movies made about him, which I'm planning to watch. I'm going to put those up on screen as well. He's been on TV shows, been on interviews, he's been investigated by loads of different ghost teams, paranormal teams, all over the internet. I'm sure that if you look on YouTube after this video, you will see loads of people visiting the museum specifically for Robert the doll. Robert even has his own websites. Fans can buy Robert replica books, coasters and t-shirts, and most adventurers can even volunteer to be locked in with Robert after dark. So if you live in Florida and are planning to go for a creepy outing, maybe this museum is the place for your next adventure.
Our story today begins right here at the Key West Cemetery, and it begins with a tombstone that's directly behind me. This is the grave of Robert Eugene Otto. In a couple of hours from now, I'm heading over to the East Martello Museum, which is where Robert the doll is kept. And I'm gonna meet with David Sloan, who is now the caretaker of Robert the doll.
All right, so the museum is closed. We got one flashlight, and that's all the light we've got.
You know, I gotta say, as you walk around this historical fort and see all of the items that are now in this museum, items that are truly possessed, behind every door there's just this feeling of kind of unease, is the only way that I can describe this. So we're heading into another dark building in here, and here we have who we came to meet. Now I'm going to turn off the camera here real quick because we need to ask Robert permission before I film, correct?
I don't recommend asking permission.
You don't?
No, I think it's a horrible idea.
Okay, so what do I do?
Just be respectful.
Just be respectful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when you ask permission, you're putting yourself below the spirits. You're giving away your power.
Okay.
And it's inviting them in. So it's very dangerous.
Okay.
Just be respectful.
Be respectful. Okay. So here is Robert. Now, when was the last time Robert was moved? Like physically moved?
They moved him during the hurricane, the last storm that came through.
Because in other images, other videos that I've seen, he's actually holding his lion, and here his lion is sitting up in his lap.
Right. So that was a change, and now his hat sits a little further back.
A little further back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice when you look at him, he's tied in with monofilament. That's because of his constant moving.
So he's actually tied to the chair right now.
He's tied to the chair. So people used to talk about Robert getting up and moving all the time. Now the movements that people report are things like Robert swallowing.
So Gene died in what, 72?
1974.
Number 74. And then the doll went to the person that bought the home, had Robert for what, 20 years, if I recall?
Yeah, Myrtle Reuter.
Yep. And then she brought the doll here saying, take this from me because it is definitely a haunted doll. Did I get my history correct?
Yeah, and Myrtle had the doll, and I talked to relatives of hers, people who knew her. And they said that she changed after she got the doll. She used to spend all of her time with him. And when she brought him here, she came in frantic. I talked to the curator who was here at the time. He said she came in saying, this is Robert the doll. He belonged to Gene Otto and he's haunted. I need you to take him. She said he had locked her in her room. He pushed her in her room, slammed the door, and held the doorknob so that she couldn't get out.
Oh, wow.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to be wrapping up the case now. I hope you enjoyed part 2, and I will see you in the next spooky video.